Hello everyone, I'm Nikki Hamblin, an Olympian and a member of the ITA education team. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 9th ITA monthly educational webinar of 2022. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world. Today is the first of two webinars. We are going to talk about supplements and informed decision making, as they can be a cause of unintentional doping. In this session, we will hear from an athlete who tested positive due to a supplement and offer some practical suggestions and strategies to reduce the risk of supplement use by taking a food-first approach. Before I introduce the topic in more detail and our panelists, please allow me to do some housekeeping. We are delivering this webinar in 5 languages. On your Zoom menu, you should see a button called Interpretation. By clicking on this icon, you can select a channel with your preferred language. I will be presenting this session in English, but you can also listen to the audio in Arabic, French, Russian, or Spanish. Today's webinar is part of our educational monthly series that are publicly available and designed to tackle key anti-doping topics and to raise clean sport awareness. As for all our sessions, it goes without saying that we encourage debate, interaction, and questions, but we do not tolerate any kind of aggressive behaviour or abusive or racist language. We trust you will all join us in the spirit of fairness, respect, and integrity. Some other housekeeping points. You are welcome to use the chat function to tell us your name, where you are from, and your sport or role. Also, as a reminder, you can use the Q&A function to ask a question on this topic to one of our expert panelists, and as always, we will leave some time at the end for these. Finally, a note that we record all our webinars so we can make them available on our website and YouTube channel for those who are not able to attend the live session. As always, it is my pleasure to give a shout out to our official presenting partner, Informed Sport. Their investment allows us to deliver the webinar program free of charge in 5 different languages. Informed Sport is a global certification program for supplements that batch tests products for substances prohibited in sport. As supplement contamination continues to be one of the leading causes of inadvertent doping, which is very relevant to our topic today, we encourage athletes and athlete support personnel to check all products before use at sport.wetestYoutrust.com. The ITA is proud to be recognised by UNESCO as a leading international organisation for the delivery of anti-doping programs. And this educational webinar is delivered with the support of the UNESCO International Convention Against Doping in Sport. Now, on to the first session of our 2 webinars on supplements and informed decision making. Athletes are bound by the World Anti-Doping Code and the principle of strict liability. This means that athletes are solely responsible for any substance found in their sample. This is regardless of whether a substance was consumed intentionally or unintentionally. It requires an athlete to take a high level of personal responsibility. We know from scientific testing that supplements can contain prohibited substances, so using them poses a risk of an athlete sample testing positive. Even though there may have been no intention to cheat, an athlete will still have to face the consequences of a positive test. The risks of supplement use are due to the supplement industry not being well regulated. Poor quality control means that products can be mislabeled. So, labels may not accurately list all the ingredients it contains, or substances may be listed under an alternative name. Contaminated due to transfer of ingredients occurring during the manufacturing process, and a risk to health, as supplements can contain toxic substances. Now, there are supplement companies which are more reputable than others, and there will be that are correctly labelled, not contaminated, and importantly, are batch tested by an independent certification company such as Informed Sport. This can make them significantly safer, but no supplement can ever be 100% guaranteed risk-free. Despite these known risks, often, as we strive for excellence and are pushing our bodies to their physical limits, supplementation has become a normal part of the athletic life, with research suggesting that anywhere between 40 and 100% of athletes use supplements. So, this webinar is designed to support you to make informed decisions around your supplement use, and so you can lower your risk and do your part to keep sport real. I am very pleased to be joined today by our two panelists who will share their experiences, expertise, and advice. I would like to invite Carina and Lillian to turn on their cameras and offer them a warm welcome. Firstly, I would like to introduce Carina Horn. Carina is an Olympic semi-finalist in the sport of athletics from South Africa. She is the 100 metres and 60 metres national record holder and has competed at multiple world and regional championship events. In 2019, she tested positive for a prohibited substance as a result of the use of a supplement. In 2022, she returned to competition and recently competed at the World Athletics Championships. Hi, Carina. Oh, we can't hear you, Carina. Could you check your microphone?
Hi, everyone.
Great. Hi, Carina. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Next, I would like to introduce Lillian Morton. Lillian has over 12 years of experience in the sports science field. She has an International Olympic Committee diploma in sports nutrition and a master's in sport and exercise science. Lillian has worked with world champions, Olympians, and other elite athletes across many sports to get the most out of their nutrition strategies. Welcome to the webinar, Lillian.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, everyone.
As mentioned, we will leave some time at the end of the session for questions from you in the audience. So if you would like to ask Lillian or Carina anything related to today's topic, please use the Q&A box. During the webinar, you will see some poll questions pop up on your screen. As a reminder to those of you who haven't been in our webinars before, your answers are anonymous, so please don't hesitate to participate. So, to make sure you are all with me, let's start with a quick poll question right now. The question is, do you, or does an athlete you work with, use supplements? The options are, as you can see on your screen, yes, no, or I don't know. So when I was an athlete, my response would have been yes, I do take supplements. As an endurance runner, I simply could not consume enough red meat or green leafy vegetables to maintain iron levels within a range to support my training and competing. Therefore, I would regularly use an iron supplement. As a reminder, all responses are anonymous, so please do jump in and get involved. And we can now close the poll. Awesome. And that 65% of you that have said yes, that's right in the middle of that 40 to 100% range, wide range of athletes that research shows that athletes do take supplements. So please now let me welcome back Carina. As 3 years ago, her answer would have been yes, she did use supplements. Carina, thank you again for your very important contribution to this webinar to support clean sport education. So let's talk a little bit about what happened to you. So in August 2019, you underwent an out-of-competition drug test, which revealed the presence of a prohibited substance. Can you perhaps share with us what led up to this positive test?
Yes, thanks for having me. So what happened, like we normally do, is we have a European season. So I'm from South Africa, then we travel to Europe and based there for around 3 months. And we were at a meeting in Switzerland. And after the meeting, we discussed the upcoming World Champs was in Doha to have a training camp there with our training group and with our organizer. And then he also told me that I don't have enough visa days left in my passport. So that means I have to go back to South Africa instead of going back to Austria, which I've been based and my coach was at. So I actually flew back straight from the meeting back to South Africa, and I left everything behind in Austria, which up until today, all my clothes and everything that I've packed for that 3 months is still in Austria. And when I arrived in South Africa, I obviously had to buy the protein shakes and creatine and stuff that I normally use, but I normally used a German brand for the past 10 years, so I know everything was good. But now I obviously had over a month's training by myself without a coach and everything, without my supplements. So as from the airport, I drove to the supplement store, bought a protein shake and a pre-workout and creatine, just to get back into training for the month to go back to Europe and compete. And it was a month later, I flew back to Europe. I arrived there the next morning. I got a test, and then obviously it came back positive, and it was a contamination of the supplements that I bought in South Africa. And luckily it was found in the supplements, which was one quite big process.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk a little bit more in depth about that process. But I would just perhaps like to highlight this, that you have competed for a long time at the very highest level of our sport. You're an Olympian, you've competed at multiple world championships. And I think perhaps a general perception around elite athletes is that they would never have a visa issue because that kind of thing is all sorted for them. But we can see from your example that isn't. Often even athletes at the top of their sport still have to do all those logistical things for themselves and leave all their clothes in Austria. And so I think there's quite a key message in that if it could happen to you, it could really happen to anyone. So I would like to ask you, what was that moment like when you were told that you had returned a positive test?
Yeah, it is a feeling that I couldn't describe. I had a call on a Friday afternoon, and the investigator told me that, and yeah, it was like something that I didn't expect even in my wildest dreams to happen to me, because yeah, I even had to ask the investigator that called me to spell out the names because I didn't even understand. So I literally had a piece of paper with me and he had to spell it out, the name. And yeah, it was a feeling, it's like your heart sinks into your feet and everything is just taken away from you, like right at that moment.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that moment was like for you. So this has happened, as you kind of just described. Your world has literally come crashing down around you. As an athlete, as a high-level athlete, I'm sure that was your life. Your sport was your life almost. But you did manage to identify that the supplement was the cause of the positive test. So did you do any checks on that supplement before you used it?
Yes, of course. So as I went into the shop as well, I had a call with a sports doctor. I did my research while I was in the shop as well. And at that time, my Austrian coach, he also did his research. So it was not only going to the shop and just take something from the shelf and see this is a protein, take this protein. It was me taking literally photos of what the store had. And I sent the photos to my coach. And then he said, okay, this and this and this, just make sure from the doctor's side which one would be better. And as all three of us decided on that, my coach and I also did our research, and yeah, and I made a few calls to the doctor as well before I bought it. And yeah, everything according to us was okay to use.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's important. It's not like you were you made some significant efforts to check that the supplement was okay. As you said, you didn't just go and take it off the shelf of any shop. You checked with a doctor, you checked with your coach. I think for me, this is one of part of your story when you've shared it with us previously that I think I didn't appreciate or I didn't understand. And this is to do with the burden of proof. So in anti-doping, it is on the athlete to prove whether the presence of a prohibited substance was unintentional, which can then reduce the ban or sanction. And so I know you've shared this with me before, but please share this with the audience. What exactly did you do and what did you go through in those 2 years?
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of different perspectives and sides that you can get. It's from the comments that people give you, the way you get treated. Like after a while, you see someone in the mall that worked at the sports grounds where I was training, they won't even greet you. But yeah, and then from the different side to make sure I proved my side was I had to literally, I got lawyers. I had 3 different lawyers as well. I started with an American lawyer, and from there it was a year. It took a year with the American lawyer to get through to get the test done, and was still not good enough. So I also had to drive, like you have to go to the shop, get the same batch number that you used from the supplement, like literally, and it's like not a nice feeling because you stand in the shop, but now you have to remember, or on your phone I had a picture of the batch number. Now you literally have to go through everything and see if you can find the same batch number so that you can send a closed batch to the doping people. And yeah, I had to send it to America. That also didn't go that well, so I also had to drive in the middle of the night because you're not allowed to give a lot of time. So straight after I bought the closed batches, I had to drive a 5-hour drive to Bloemfontein in South Africa. I arrived after midnight, waited there for the early morning to give it to the labs there. That happened twice. And after a few months as well, when they tested, it was still not good enough for everybody. So that lab directly sent everything that which they did find in the subs, what I got tested positive for. They had to send it to Switzerland, and they also made some tests in Switzerland. And yeah, both of the labs found the substance in the supplements that I used. And then it's still ongoing, even though now it's proven that what I tested positive for was in the supplements and it was contaminated. It goes further to get scientists to prove now the amount of scoops that you used, is it the same amount that got tested in your urine sample or blood sample? Does it add up? So it's quite a whole lot of a big process.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And because I think you said that this, how long approximately did this whole process take?
Yeah, that took 2 years. So which is also not nice because it's when you can't race, you don't have an income. That's actually where you make your income to have athletics as a career.
Yeah, and I think what, I don't want to say you were lucky because you did the right thing on this, but the fact that you had the batch number was something really useful. And we're not going to cover batch numbers in this webinar, but in our next webinar, that's when we will talk more about that sort of thing. But it's definitely a key message there for athletes and athlete support personnel is to record those batch numbers.
Yeah.
You did mention briefly about some of the consequences that you have faced but could you perhaps share a little bit more of those? I know you have a few different types of consequences.
Yeah, it's just when you have to come back afterwards as well, like how you get treated on the track, like the way people look at you, the understanding that they have of what actually happened is not what you go through. I don't think a lot of people actually know what a process like this is. They just see, okay, this athlete got tested positive, and they immediately think, yeah, or just make their own assumptions. Yeah, they're using this, and I knew that. But in the meantime, they don't actually know anything at all. They don't even know you as a person. They just maybe follow you and see your results and know you're a sprinter, but they don't know you as a person. They start suddenly attack you as a person. Yeah, which I also had, like even the previous record holder also wants her record back, which like people don't understand is like after a race, even if it was an indoor record that I ran, the outdoor record, after a record that you race, you get tested before the record can go onto the record books. And for me, I've been since 2014, I've been on the doping program. So I get tested at home, not only at races. So throughout the year, I know everything is fine. So up until 2019, when that happened, I knew something was wrong. And that's why I actually went through that trouble, because it's going through that is just much easier to give up, actually.
And I think you mentioned that before in our conversations before this webinar, like it really did affect your training. You couldn't even go to the track for quite a significant amount of time.
Yes, I wasn't allowed to train on. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like that. But yeah, I wasn't allowed to be on the track. So for the first year, at least, I wasn't in training. But also mentally, I couldn't train. It was only a few months before, like over a year, when I actually decided, okay, listen, I have to do something. So either I decide, what if I can prove this, because like trying to prove it when you still know you're innocent it messes with your mind, because it's almost actually impossible to prove, even though you know that in your heart it's really hard to prove your innocence. So then, yeah, only a few months before I could have actually started going to training, and not even on the track, just to the gym.
Yeah. And what happened? Did your sponsors stick by you, or did you lose all of those during that time as well?
Yeah, so obviously, like the sponsors withdraw, and I think it's like quite common sense that they will. But yeah, with me, there was just no words. Nobody asked questions. They just read what they see in the newspapers. They don't come to you as an athlete and ask, listen, what is going on? What happened? Is this true? Is this not true? Some people people just saw live on the news in South Africa as well, without knowing the real story or without asking questions. They just take what they see in the media and say, okay, this is positive, and let everybody make their own assumptions.
Yeah. And so, given everything that you've been through, what advice would you give to athletes or athlete support personnel about using supplements?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever safe to use any kind of supplements. I think it's really hard. I've made my comeback this year, and yeah, I didn't use protein shake. I didn't use any creatine or whatever I used. I only used what I knew was tested again with my story. which is only like vitamin C, magnesium, and zinc, and like more to keep me healthy. So if it's possible to train without supplements, it's better. But yeah, as an athlete, if you train hard, for me, like the protein shake was there because I trained so hard. So I couldn't eat in between the two trainings because then I will vomit in the gym or vomit on the track. So protein shake was actually perfect. So that's where it gets difficult to say, okay, don't use supplements. But yeah, it gets difficult. But yeah, just do your own research as fast as possible and as good as possible before taking anything.
Well, thank you very much, Carina, for sharing your story. I mean, I've said this to you before, but we really do appreciate it. It does take great courage to share such a, I guess, personal and emotional part of your life, to try and give warnings to other athletes so that it doesn't happen to them. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will come back, Carina, at the end for some questions. So if you do have any questions for her, please use the Q&A function. So now that we've heard Carina's story of how she tested positive due to a supplement and what she went through emotionally, social impact that it has had on her, I think we can all agree that we wouldn't want this to happen to us as an athlete or an athlete that we work with. So let's invite back Lillian to talk about all the things an athlete can do instead of or try prior to using supplements to reduce the risk of having an experience like Carina's. Hi, Lillian.
Hi.
So Lillian, one of the phrases that is often used when athletes are given warnings about supplement use is that they should minimize the risk by taking a food-first approach. But perhaps you could explain exactly what a food-first approach is.
Okay. So a food-first approach is exactly that. So we use food as our primary source of nutrients as opposed to supplements. So you just eat a really wide variety of fresh, wholesome, nutritious foods that will provide you with just about all of your vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, so carbohydrates, proteins, and then you add supplements to kind of fill any need that those foods don't meet. But if you have a really good diet, then food actually meets most of your needs. So food first means you eat a good balanced diet before you even consider supplements.
Thank you. And so from you've had extensive experience in nutrition at the highest levels of sport. Why do you advocate for this food first approach?
So I think for me personally, and with the athletes I worked with and still work with, food is a good basic diet is the platform on which you build everything else. So you need a good foundation before you can layer anything else on top. The other thing is food provides things that are not just nutrients. So foods are quite complex. They've got lots of things. So they're a mixture of nutrients, not just a single nutrient, which supplements are. The other thing is food is delicious. It's quite joyful. It brings people together, and it takes a little bit of time and priority. And I think that's quite important in an athlete's life too. So food is definitely a more balanced approach and meets more than just a performance need. It meets a health need as well. So that's personally why I advocate food first. And it's just damn yummy.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I ask you, because you talked about this before, is that research, what does the research show about the effects that supplements have on elite athletes and their performance?
So if you actually read the scientific literature, the effect of supplementation for elite athletes is very, very small. The gains you get from supplements are marginal, and you actually get much better benefit from food in terms of overall health and recovery than you do from a supplement. And because elites are so well trained and their physiology is so well advanced, they don't actually get a huge or even a big effect from supplements. I think the other thing is a lot of supplements for athletes are sponsored. You know, they take it because they've been given the supplement. And not all athletes respond to supplements. So quite a few supplements, you have responders and non-responders. So a supplement may work for one individual, but not for another individual. So yeah, when you're using a supplement, it's not a one size fits all, and it doesn't actually work incredibly well for elite athletes because they are so well trained.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Would you like to share a little bit about this table? Because I know that this kind of resource is really useful for athletes and athlete support personnel. So perhaps you could talk us through it a little bit, what it means, how perhaps it could be used.
Yeah, so this table actually I pulled off the internet, and I have the reference down there at the bottom. But supplements are designed to be convenient, and I think Carina actually talked about it when she was talking about having a protein shake in between 2 training sessions. And most supplements are designed for convenience, but you can get what you need from food. And so this table just has some alternatives for energy gels, carbohydrate bars, protein that actually just come from normal food sources. And these can be found online and are quite sort of readily available if you look for them. So yeah, this table, and I'm sure the participants of this webinar will get this table with their slides, just has alternatives that are food-based as opposed to supplement-based to help them get carbohydrate, protein, caffeine, and things we typically supplement with.
Great, thank you. So I would like to ask you a question next, which is slightly related to a personal experience, and that is about what could be some risks to an athlete's health if their food intake is too low because food is regularly substituted for a supplement. I know Carina talked about her example of between 2 sessions, like a protein shake was all she could stomach. But to give my example, particularly early on in my running career, I would get up in the morning and I would have some breakfast and I would go for a run. I would be in a rush to get out of the door to go to work because very common among athletes, like their sport doesn't support them enough financially that they can't do anything else on the side. Yeah. So I would grab a protein shake and then not eat any food for 3 or 4 hours until it was lunchtime. And the reason I did that was because it was quick, it was easy, it was very convenient, and the packaging on the tub told me that it had everything in it that I needed. So, but kind of now, looking back on that and reflecting on it, but maybe you could talk about what some of the risks are of kind of taking this approach.
Okay. So one of the key risks of when you use supplements as opposed to food is you typically don't get enough energy. So there is a huge amount of research now regarding low energy availability, or sometimes it's called relative energy deficiency in sport. And the simplest way I can explain this is when you are exercising and training, your body will expend energy to support that training. But if you are not eating enough to support your training and your everyday living, what the body will do is give energy to training, and then it has to make do with what's left. So low energy availability means that you don't have enough energy left over after exercise to actually support normal body functions. So we get increased stress fracture risk. Your immune get compromised, mood gets compromised. So supplements do not actually give athletes the amount of energy they need to both train well and live well. And that is one of the inherent risks. So in most organizations now globally actually work with athletes around low energy availability and RED-S. But yeah, when you eat food, you get energy. When you eat supplements, you just get a particular nutrient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find all of this super interesting, and it is definitely a whole webinar of its own. Have provided us with a resource on Redis, which we have linked in the slides at the end of this webinar. So if listening to this, you are interested in learning a little bit more about this, we have a resource for you to do that with. So let's now talk about some commonly used supplements, what they do, why athletes use them, and if there are any key messages for the athletes. As part of this, we will launch some polls to see if you're aware of alternative food sources to certain supplements. But first of all, Lillian, can you tell us a little bit about probably the most well-known supplement, protein? So what does it do? Why do athletes use it? And what are some key messages?
Okay, so I think according to mass media and everyone all over the world, protein gives you muscle. It actually doesn't. So protein supplements were designed to fill a need for convenience. So a protein powder contains about 20 to 25 grams of protein, which is typically what we need to help recovery after exercise. And that is why there is that dose in a protein. So protein powders, basically drive an anabolic effect after exercise. So anabolic means it helps the muscle and drives recovery, but you actually do need to do some resistance training to help build the muscle. Why do athletes use it? Because it is really convenient. As you said, you just, put it in a shake and walk out the door. But it is definitely a convenience tool, although I have met athletes who use it as a meal or a snack because they're too busy. And sometimes when athletes are trying to lose weight, they will use a protein shake instead of eating food to make them less hungry. But its primary purpose is to give you that 20 to 25 grams of protein to help recovery and its convenience. Yeah. Right. My key message is you can actually get what you need from food. If you can't afford protein shakes, they can be quite expensive, and they're not all created equal. Some are actually quite high risk and some are pretty robust and worthwhile.
All right, thank you for that summary of protein. It's certainly interesting for me because I don't know much about this. So let's now launch to get a little bit more interaction with the audience. So what food alternative to a protein supplement could an athlete use? And so let's see, you can pick as many answers as you would like, as there is more than one correct answer. So the options are nuts, chocolate soy milk, Greek yogurt, chicken breast, a banana, or lentils. So we've given you quite a few different options there to choose from. As I said, there is more than one correct answer. Also, our polls are completely anonymous, so please just jump on and have a go. Of course, we may also have some experts in the audience or athletes who eat something different after training or competition that they know is a good source of protein. And we do welcome you to share this in the chat. So it looks like chicken breast is the most popular answer. And I'll just give you a few more seconds for those last minute contributions. Awesome. So let's close the poll. And I think for this one, I am going to hand over to Lillian to go through the different options, and she can tell us whether they're a good source of protein or possibly not.
Okay. Chicken breast, absolutely bang on. It's a high protein food. The other thing about chicken breast is it has a high biological value. So it means the body absorbs the proteins from chicken breast really well. Chicken breast also has grams of leucine per 100 grams, and leucine absolutely drives muscle recovery and growth. So chicken breast, great option. Banana has no protein, or just, yeah, so that's a carbohydrate source. Great recovery food, but not for the protein component. Nuts do have protein, but quite low protein. I know everyone thinks nuts are high protein, but they're actually not very high. Greek yogurt, yep, absolutely. Chocolate, soy milk. Now, plant-based products do have protein, so this applies to both soy milk and lentils, but the biological value, the way the body absorbs protein from these foods is a little bit different. So soy would actually be better than the lentils on this particular one, because the body would handle the soy milk much better. And Greek yogurt, another great option. But yeah, all those people that said chicken breast, hands down, would be the best option. Not the easiest, but the best.
Yeah, I can now see all these athletes turning up to training with a piece of chicken.
Chicken breast, yeah.
Thank you for taking us through those. I think it is important for athletes to know that there are a few different options. Some maybe have slightly more protein, but they can always find something that is to their
Can I give a little nutrition top tip quickly, Nikki?
Of course you can.
Okay. So if you can have even something after training, just a small something, a small snack or some small food, it buys you a window of time so you can go and have a small meal. And that's when you can include the things like the chicken and the lentils and, you know, the bigger things. So just buy a little bit of a window by having a small snack, and then you can get the protein in within 2 hours and you should be fine.
Great, thank you for that. That's a great tip.
Cool.
Okay, let's look at another common supplement, creatine. So Lil, what does it do? Why do athletes use it? And what are some key messages from you around creatine?
Okay, so creatine is it's a molecule that's actually sits in the muscle, and we make it ourselves. So we produce it, it's the biological terms, endogenously. So we make it ourselves. And if you're an omnivore and eat meat, we actually get creatine from the meat products that we eat. We use creatine in sprint activities. So it's the first energy source in high intensity activities or explosive movements. So it can be depleted, or it takes a while to regenerate in between efforts. So the idea behind creatine supplementation is you saturate your creatine stores so that you can recover faster between efforts. But the biggest responders to creatine are actually vegetarians, because they have naturally low creatine stores because they don't eat meat products. But if you have a healthy, balanced diet that contains meat, you are actually okay. And to be honest, creatine doesn't work for a lot of athletes for all sports. So if you're in sprint activities, absolutely, there's some benefit. But if you're an endurance athlete, there's probably no benefit. And the other thing is there are responders and non-responders, and there's also the potential for water weight gain. So you can just hold a lot of water when you're supplementing with creatine. So again, there's individual responses to creatine, but it's useful for sprint activities if you actually need to saturate your stores. But if you have a good balanced diet, you should be sweet. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, let's now another poll. So let's see if you in the audience know your creatine alternatives. So a question is, which foods are a naturally occurring source of creatine? Again, you can choose as many as you like, as there is more than one correct answer. The options you can choose from are beef, salmon, herring, or pumpkin seeds. And again, if you know of any food sources of creatine, please do feel free to write them in the chat. I think the more options we can share, the more likely an athlete may be to find something to their taste. Also, another reminder, the polls are anonymous, so please just jump on, see what you think. It would be great to have you involved. So our poll, oh, the numbers are still going up. People are still. Okay, so we've reached just over 60% of you who have participated. So I think we will close the poll. And I can tell you that, or I think I can tell you, we will confirm this with Lillian, but all of these options are sources of creatine. So Lillian, am I correct, incorrect? And what are your comments?
You are correct, but I did see Zoltan's comment around carrots, and I had to quickly pick up my phone and Google that. I was like, what? Carrots? So thank you for that, Zoltan. The levels are quite low, but yes, all those foods do contain creatine. Beef would have the highest, but so would salmon and herring. But the plant-based sources would have some, but it would be in much smaller quantities.
Mm-hmm.
And Zoltan, thank you for the carrot reference. That was great. Love learning new stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, like, as we talked about vegetarians a few minutes ago, so it is important to find options for everyone. So the pumpkin seeds and the carrots, definitely very helpful.
Yes. Okay. And I think that's why it's important to eat a wide variety of foods, because then you're getting nutrients from everything and you're less likely to be deficient in anything.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so the third and final supplement we are going to look at in this session is caffeine. So Lillian, again, same questions. What does it do? Why do athletes use it? And what are your key messages around it?
Caffeine. Athletes love caffeine. Everyone loves caffeine. Caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant. So I think a lot of athletes use it to perk them up. And to be honest, pre-workout in particular has very high levels of caffeine because it hypes you up. But the key action of caffeine in the body is it acts on these receptors that change your perception of effort. So the research shows caffeine actually reduces your perception of effort. So it makes things seem easier than it actually is. So it's a stimulant, plus it affects how hard your exercise session seems to be. Caffeine, like all supplements, is prescribed as a dose relative to body weight in order for it to be effective. Again, very strong responders and non-responders, and we know this. Caffeine is probably the one supplement where we do know there's a responder versus non-responder effect. So not everyone responds the same. It can upset your gut if you are new to it or you take a dose that's too high. And I think athletes use it. In my experience, athletes have used it to feel more alert as opposed to alter their perception of effort. My key message is there's caffeine in quite a lot of things. You can't beat a good cup of coffee. So you can actually get caffeine from food sources. And if you are going to use caffeine, just be mindful that it has what we call a half-life. So a half-life is how long a molecule stays in your bloodstream. Caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours, which means it can disrupt sleep. So generally, if you are competing at night, so I saw we had some boxers. I'll get to the young athlete thing. So boxers typically fight at night. Caffeine would disrupt sleep quality and therefore compromise recovery. So my advice is always to try to find alternatives or use caffeine earlier in the day rather than have high doses late at night and disrupt sleep, especially in tournament situations too, where that sleep's really, really important. Shall I answer that question about the under 14s?
Yep, sure, go for it.
Okay. So caffeine is a stimulant. Caffeine can become quite addictive. I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to give up coffee, if you're a big coffee drinker, but you get headaches. I think young adolescent athletes would benefit from more sleep and better food to actually get themselves up. It's not a good thing to rely on caffeine at such a young age. Yep, natural guarana is high in caffeine too. All right. More questions, Nikki?
Save them to the end. We will get to them.
Yeah.
So as we've talked about the coffee, it's probably the obvious source of caffeine, but perhaps someone doesn't enjoy a flat white. Could you talk through some other sources?
Green tea. Green tea actually has about 46 milligrams of caffeine. And I think a single shot of espresso has got 64. So green tea is actually reasonably high. Someone had guarana, so natural guarana is high in caffeine. Cocoa beans and therefore dark chocolate is quite high in caffeine. So the darker the chocolate, the higher the caffeine content. And yeah, those would be your higher sources. Even just a normal standard cup of tea for those from the UK and India, just normal tea has got, caffeine as well. So you can get it from multiple sources.
Great. So now we have very much focused on food in this session, but I would like to take the opportunity, Lillian, to ask from your experience, because you have a lot of experience in practical terms, what would be your other top tip for athletes to potentially minimize their supplement use?
I think, and I know it's so hard. I've seen it firsthand, and athletes do work and do train, but it is important to, in order to reduce your use of supplements, you actually have to prioritize the use of food and the use of rest and the use of smart recovery. And that takes time. So it's about trying to reduce the rush and balance things out. Sleep is a powerful recovery tool. Most of our adaptation and recovery occurs in the first 2 cycles of sleep at night. So absolutely try prioritize sleep. And do prioritize a bit of rest for yourself too. And those would be my biggest hacks, I think. And I know it's not easy. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do, but it's so worth the investment and prioritizing it too. And just enjoyment, I guess, enjoying being an athlete in the journey as well.
Thank you. So we do appreciate this has been a whistle-stop tour of a food-first approach. If you would like to read or learn more, we have curated a list of resources for you to look at. And of course, you will receive these slides today. So Carina, if you could perhaps turn your camera back on, because we are moving to our live audience questions. And I do see a question there from Karen that will be for you. And Karen's question, Carina, is, were the supplements used in South Africa approved by Informed Sport?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Yes. So the supplements that I bought as well, like it had the sign on the supplement itself that says it's water approved and good to use by athletes. That was even on the label of the supplement.
I think we may have lost Nikki with a connection for a little while. You may recognize you may recognize my voice as Olya, who usually hosts the webinars, but I'll keep my camera off. And as she's reconnecting, apologies for my voice. This is why I'm not hosting today. Just to jump on Carina's comment, there are many claims on supplements that say WADA approved or an anti-doping organization approved. So this was one of those false claims that Carina saw on the label. And normally anything that is on the Informed Sport website, to address the question from Karen, would be batch tested. So very low risk of containing a banned substance, as it would be batch tested by Informed Sport and other organizations that do the same. So in the interest of keeping us on time, I'll take over the facilitating duties while Nikki logs on, and maybe I will come to the next question in the Q&A. Lillian, do you see the question from Dr. Weil?
No.
I will just read it out. He's
yes.
asking if nutritional supplements are considered as perhaps doping or anti-doping. Oh, Nikki's back in and it's Olya just reading out the questions. So, and the question is, do we need a TUE? So maybe there's a quick answer to this question here, if nutritional supplements need a TUE?
No. If it's a nutritional supplement, no.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a quick answer, and we have more resources on TUEs on our website, and we have a webinar dedicated to TUEs that you can watch. It's recorded. And Nikki, I'll hand it over to you to finish with the last few questions and the wrap up.
Thank you, and I apologize, everyone. So I think we are up to Jose's question, which is pre-competition. What protein sources would you recommend? So Lillian, are you able to answer that, please?
So it depends on the competition. And to be honest, protein doesn't really provide energy. Protein is a building nutrient, so we don't use it for fuel. So I tend to focus on the things that will provide energy, which are typically carbohydrate or fats if it's an ultra endurance event. So proteins, yeah, just a standard way, or just some sort of protein in the food. Just be aware it takes a while to digest, so make sure it's in that pre-game or pre-competition meal 3 to 4 hours before.
Great, thank you. And a question from, again, to you, Lil, Dr. Pandy. Can you please give any pros and cons for tea and coffee with respect to caffeine? So is one any better than another, or does it just depend on your personal preference?
I think it depends on your personal preference. The caffeine content in coffee is higher, but tea actually has other things in it, and one of those is L-theanine, which has antioxidant effects as well. So I think it does depend on preference and what your overall goal is, but tea does have L-theanine, which we know is beneficial for antioxidant capacity. Great.
So that is all for today in terms of questions. We do have to start to wrap up now. But if you do still have any questions, or if anything wasn't answered today, you can always reach us at education@ita.sport. So this does wrap up today's webinar. A big thank you to both Carina and Lillian, and of course, a big thank you to our audience for your attention and active participation. We hope that you found this session valuable. After the webinar ends, you will receive a link to the survey along with the presentation slides. We ask you to please take a few moments to fill it out, as your feedback is very valuable to us. As mentioned, today we did cover part 1 of 2 of our webinars on supplements. Next month, we will continue with the topic and hear from another athlete and another nutrition expert. This webinar will cover the process to go through if you do decide to use supplements and how you can protect yourself. And finally, if you would like to receive updates from the ITA, including information about our future webinars, please sign up using the link you will find on this slide. Thank you all once again, and I wish you a great rest of your day.